Wow, it's just me. No Judge Evie tonight. It's James, and I'm hanging out here. I'm living for crits by myself, solo with Greg. Greg's here. What's up, Greg? Greg, this is up your alley since this is the all Savage Worlds living for crits. I should have still said Judge James. It's not like I'm not a judge when I'm not talking about DCC, but given that this is a Savage Worlds night, maybe I should say GM James. I don't know. There's no special name for GMs in Savage Worlds. There's Marshall if you are running Deadlands. So maybe Marshall James. That would be appropriate. So anywho, I'm adorned tonight in my my Metroid hoodie. This is I think I've had it on here before. This is to wait. I gotta fix my hands around. Oh, so this is one side, I guess. Anyway, this is to celebrate the fact that I thought I was really far along in Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, which I just started playing about a month ago. I thought I was really far along in this game, and apparently I'm not. I just finished all this morning. I spent pretty much just trying to plug away at the Spider Guardian. Like if you've played Metroid Prime 2, there's like this. You have to get back all of your abilities because Samus Aran, just every Metroid game loses all of her stuff. I mean, I think that if there's anything she should do before Metroid Prime 4 is like have some kind of insurance program where she can just make sure her swag doesn't get lost in the next iteration. That's how it works, right? Well, I thought I was really far along, and then I went and took a peek at a long play of the game on YouTube and found out, wow, I'm about halfway through the game. So that's going to be a long time coming. I think my dog is here. Why are you, who's down here? I guess no one's down here. I think Evie's he's trying to jump me here and throw me off. I don't know. Who is whispering down here? What? Oh, it's you. Oh, it's tea or coffee.
Coffee and oh my gosh, how did this mug get into a Savage World show?
Oh, another Money Cook Games mug from Jen. Wow.
How did
Go
that
figure.
happen?
Anyway. All right, only other news I have here is last week we announced we were off Twitter. This week we're announcing we're still on Twitter. So, I mean, my cousin Rachel, who is amazing, taught me how to modify my Twitter experience so it's a little more manageable, and I decided to stick around because we spent all these years building up Twitter followers. Why not? So, and then the last piece of news thing I'll say here, I think last week we talked about Weird Frontiers. So here's a comparison of Weird Frontiers. Here's my Deadlands book here. Okay, this is my Deadlands Weird West book. Okay, for the new Suede edition of Deadlands. And then here's Weird Frontiers, the Dungeon Crawl Classics Weird Western. Here's my leather-bound edition. It's like 900 and some odd pages. It's a beast. I haven't even tried reading it yet. I've play tested this, but this thing is madness. Absolute madness. But I'm very glad it's here finally. So, oh, look at it. Shannon's here. I was hoping this was the show where we watched Jim finally lose it. I might lose it this show. It's very possible. Very, very possible. No questions tonight. I did have Judge Evie take a look to see if we had any, and there were none. But if you want to send a question, you can always send to dccjudgeevie@gmail.com. We will be back after tonight, the week after Gen Con. So next week's Gen Con, or this week's Gen Con. So anyway, all right, 5 things Savage Worlds does best. That is the topic tonight in the all Savage Worlds experience. Shannon, yeah, Jen was here. So I wasn't shouting at nobody. Jen was here bringing me coffee. I just figured maybe they were going to run on screen because Bab is here and like cause trouble after not being on the show. So, because originally Evie wasn't going to be here tonight. So I went ahead and like kind of wrote out the notes for the show. And then Evie's like, I'm going to be there. And it's like, well, no, you're not, because I already wrote this crap out. So you can not be on the show tonight. So I guess it was an executive producer decision. All right, what I wanted to do tonight was talk about Savage Worlds. We discussed it briefly last week and then a few times over the last couple months because around April 30th, I started playing Savage Worlds again, and it had been a long break. Actually, I did some math. And between the last Savage Worlds adventure I ran prior to April 30th, which was an East Texas University game with my home group, we were playing online because COVID, and then the one I ran in April, there was 109 sessions of games I ran for other systems, from Shadow of the Demon Lord to Dungeon Crawl Classics, Mutant Crawl Classics. There was some 5th edition in there, all kinds of stuff. And I was thinking about what it'd be like to come back into Savage Worlds after like a long extended break, which was almost like a 2-year break or an 18-month break, I guess. And since that time, I've run 19 sessions of Savage Worlds between Deadlands, Lost Colony, East Texas University, Last Parsec, and my big game that Mordain 76 here, my friend Shannon is in, Deadlands, The Flood. And then, let's see. Now, Andy, who's also in that game, is saying you should need to figure out streaming Zoom so one of us can sub in. I do need to figure out how to have multiple folks on this. I do. I promise I could try to figure that out maybe this year. Maybe this is the year that I figure out how to have multiple people on here. Maybe this should be more interesting if it was more than just me and Evie sometimes. But anyway, so coming back to Savage Worlds in 2022 and playing in 3 campaigns now, because I have the campaign for Deadlands, which is on session 12 we just wrapped. And then I'm on my 11th session in our East Texas University campaign. This is like a 3-year-long campaign, though. This is still cooking. And then I've got, we're 2 sessions into Last Parsec. After that long break, I started coming back into it. I feel like I'm exploring Savage Worlds again for the first time, especially with the new Suede, the Adventure Edition of Savage Worlds. And I found myself kind of thinking back about what I missed about the game, and especially now that I'm coming back and running some other games since picking up Savage Worlds again, some things that I really prefer that Savage Worlds does. So hence the show tonight. So with that in mind, and balanced against all the games in between these sessions, we're going to talk about 5 things, number 5, that I think Savage Worlds does best. And obviously, these are my opinion, which means these are fact and ultimate truth. So number 1 is Bennies. I've played in so many systems that have reroll and roll boosting mechanics, from Numenera and the Cypher system and the Strange with their XP mechanic, Dungeon Crawl Classic and Mutant Crawl Classics Luck Pool, which includes DCC Lankamar's Fleeting Luck system, D&D 5e's Inspiration, Shadow of the Demon Lord's Fortune. I've played through all of these, and the Benny mechanic is the best. I think that each one is lacking something that Benny's does, and that Benny's does better. Each one is also, in most ways, necessary for the game. I mean, luck is so integral into DCC. Luck does its own thing very well, but in some ways, luck is filling in for Benny's, whereas I don't feel like in Savage Worlds, Benny's is trying to be luck. I think they're different things, even though the luck edge does give you Benny's. Maybe I just need to keep going here. All right, so why are Benny's superior? First of all, they renew each session, so you aren't depleting a pool that's not going to be there in the next game. Whereas, the luck mechanic in base DCC, it's going to be gone in the next game unless you're a halfling or a thief. If you deplete your fortune in Shadow of the Demon Lord, that's gone until you regain it. The Cypher system's XP system, if you use your XP for rerolls, you're not going to advance as quickly. It's actually more in line with the Deadlands Classic mechanic with the Fate chips, where you got those chips and they were your rerolls as well as your XP. That's how your advancement. That's how XP for Cypher system works. I think Bennies are preferable to all of those. I think that they're cheap, so that's the big thing. You get them at the start of the game. They flow easily. And since they're cheap to spend, or cheap to gain, they're cheap to spend, so it means more action. There's no need to hoard them. Something cool is always going to happen with them. And the GM gets them as well. So the Game Master gets to have bennies and take advantage of the same system. Whereas, there is no luck mechanic for the judge in Dungeon Crawl Classics. In Cypher System, there is the GM intrusion mechanic, which I think is one of those things that the Cypher System does well and does best, but we're not talking GM intrusions, we're talking Savage Worlds. So I really love how the new Deadlands, the updated Deadlands for Suede uses the Savage Worlds Bennies mechanic rather than Fate chips. I had jumped back into Deadlands Reloaded, I guess in 2019, before the Kickstarter, before Suede was relaunching. So it was late 2018, and Cooper was playing in it with a bedtime story game, and we were just using bennies instead of the Fate chips that Reloaded used. And actually, if you really like Inspiration and you really like Fortune from 5e and from Demon Lord, there is a similar mechanic called Conviction now in Savage Worlds. It's an addition to bennies, and it's like having that I think that blue chip in that blue Fate chip in Deadlands, whereas it's an additional D6 you can add to anything, whether it's damage to your dice rolls, to something you've already bennied. It's there, so you have that extra thing. So there's nothing like throwing real bennies around the table, hand them out, toss them at players, have them throw them back in the bucket. Like, for instance, that's our Benny bucket right there. When we play live, we get to use the bucket. So bennies are just amazing. It's my number one. Greg asks, how do you balance the number of bennies you give out every session? Well, that's a great question, Greg. I do try to make sure that I don't forget to tell the players they have their 3 to start with, or more or less, depending on their edges and hindrances. Obviously the GM gets their bennies from, I get 1 per player at the table, and then I get bennies for wild card characters. If you're not familiar with Savage Worlds, there are 2 types of characters in the table. There are wild cards, which are your heroes and your main bosses, and then there are extras, which are your I don't want to say minions, because they're definitely beefier than the D&D 4th edition minion that I ran across. But they aren't as beefy, and they don't roll as well. Every wild card gets to roll 2 dice whenever they're making an action. One is their trait die, and there's their wild die, which is always a D6. So I'm trying to sneeze here. I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry about that. Allergies. I'm gonna take a sip of my coffee. So aside from handing out bennies when people do things that are funny or fun, I often like to give out bennies if something happened to a player between games. If someone ended a session with something really cool that occurred, I like to give them a benny at the beginning of the next game, just so they have one, maybe one additional. I run a very active Discord server for my games, so I have one for each of my 2 weekly campaigns, and I like to keep an eye on what the chatter is like. If someone comes up with something really funny or some reason why they should have a little bit of an edge the next game, I'll hand out a benny for that. If someone names something funny or helps me name something, there's all kinds of reasons to give bennies out, and much like the Cypher System's ciphers, 1 benny is not going to break your session. So that's why it doesn't ever hurt to give out a benny. Whereas, giving out an XP in the Cypher System is going to unbalance your party potentially if the player uses it for an advancement. Like Shadow the Demon Lord's Fortune, if you hand it out, you can't give it out more than once. You can't stack it. So that's why I think that. Mechanically, I think that in Dungeon Crawl Classics, you have a cap with luck. I mean, you can be giving luck away as a benefit, but you're going to end up with characters with an 18 luck potentially, especially if they're thieves. You can't give thieves and halflings the same luck benefit unless you're using fleeting luck, because if they get it, they will cap their luck. I mean, that's just going to happen. So anyway, do I use the Joker rule? Yes, I use the Joker rule, Greg. That means whenever a Joker is drawn in the action deck, which I'll get to card-based initiative is my second thing I think that Savage Worlds does best. Whenever someone draws a Joker, whenever a hero draws a Joker, a player, they get a +2 to every action and a +2 to damage if they were to on that round. And they can choose whenever they want to go on initiative. They can go first, they can go last, they can go whenever. If the bad guys get a joker on their action, then the bad guys get the same thing. And then whoever side gets it, everyone gets a joker. I also give in-person jokers to players who will reshuffle a deck for me. I like to have 2 action decks on the table so that if we're between, and whenever a joker is drawn in initiative, it means that the deck has to get shuffled, and I like to have 2 decks, so one's always ready to roll. So I hand a deck off to the players, and they get to shuffle it, and that person gets a Benny. And I will give out a Benny for, did I say give out a joker earlier? I might give out a Benny. Give out a Benny if someone brings me coffee. That's always a benefit. It's nice to have coffee, even if it's in the same house. That's fine too. There's limitless ways to give out Bennies, in my opinion. So we touched on card-based initiative, and I want to talk about that for a minute, because one of the things I had the hardest time with when I come back to other games that aren't Savage Worlds is going back to D20-based initiative systems. I cannot tell you how much I missed card-based initiative. There's 100+ sessions of games prior to coming back to Savage Worlds. I mean, so in Savage Worlds, what happens in initiative is the GM shuffles a deck and hands the players cards, and you go in order of cards. So starting with the ace down to the 2, and then you have spades, and then hearts, and then diamonds, and then clubs. So reverse alphabetical order so if you have 2 8s, you have an 8 of hearts, there's going to be before an 8 of clubs. It means there's never going to be a tie. Unless there's 2 jokers, and then I guess that is a tie, and that happens at the same time, which you can resolve. Although there is a black joker and a red joker, so a black joker is the better one, so I guess that's going to go first. The other thing that it does mean is it means that every round is going to feel different. I think that D20 based games get monotonous during longer combats, and the one thing you can do is start to say, okay, well, you can say that no monster, a lot of monsters aren't going to fight the death. So you have a lot of orcs on the table, some of them might start to flee. That's fine, but you're going to still have the same order round after round. In Savage Worlds, you go by cards. It means this round the monsters might go last, but next round they might go first. And if you got a low card initiative, you can spend a Benny to get another card, which means maybe you'll improve your odds. That's, again, the Bennies are flowing. Greg said I'm very generous with my Bennies. Well, because you're going to need them as the game progresses. The other advantage to having cards for initiative is, as a GM, I can look down and see who is going next. In person, I play with the really big action decks that came with the Suede box set. They're huge. They're great. I can kind of see them across the table at the far end of the table. If it's not in person at home, I'll use just regular playing cards. I have not traveled yet with my Suede box swag. And then online, I still use cards. I tried the Savage.us, the Savage.us card draw system, but it seemed very kind of glitchy, and it kept crashing. So what I do is I have in front of me every PC's name, and then I have the NPCs or the bad guys to my right, and I draw the cards and lay it on top and announce what everyone has. So it's not as easy for players to tell when they're going next, but I really don't care what's easy for the players. I'm the GM, damn it. I want to know who's going when, and if I'm doing it based on basic initiative, just the base D20 roll, it's going to be the same every round, but I still need a tracking mechanism to figure that out. So I like the card-based initiative. I think card-based initiative is better than die-based initiative, plus the jokers. The jokers mean something cool happens. All right, that's the second thing. The third thing I think that Savage Worlds is best, and I'm trying to say, where am I going to get the most hell in this chat? This might be it. I don't know. Maybe wound mechanics. So in Savage Worlds, your characters are going to be shaken, wounded, or incapacitated. They're either, just dusted up a bit, and they're trying to regain their balance, or maybe it was a close call. They're starting to take wounds, or they're out of action. They are not in combat anymore. And I think that it's pretty awesome how Savage Worlds takes and breaks down damage into a much more granular level than D20 based systems, but then gives you ways to make it feel more elegant and faster. So it's not like it doesn't drag things down. Now I need to note that wild cards and extras have different ways they absorb damage. So a wild card can be shaken and take up to 4 wounds before they're out of action. With each wound that they take, meaning that it's a -1 to all of their actions until they get that wound healed. Extras can be shaken, or if they take a wound, they're off the table. Now, like many things that they affect, Bennies have an effect in this, and a player or an extra or the GM obviously can spend a Benny to try to soak the damage, which means that when they got shot right through the heart, there was a flask right there. It wasn't there. Luck saved them, if you will. But, when you're spending bennies to soak, you're not spending bennies to shoot. And if you're spending bennies to hit or spending bennies on damage or for new initiative, you don't have bennies to soak. So it's very quick in the game. If you're letting them flow and you're not getting bennies back, you can end up TPKing your table pretty quick. So I really felt the pain of going back to the D20 based system of damage when last week I ran my playtest for the DCC tournament adventure, which is a great adventure. I mean, it's going to be a good time. The tournament's going to be a great event for anyone who's going to be at the DCC tournament at Gen Con this week. However, I hate tracking hit points. I hate tracking it on the board. I hate tracking it like next to the character sheet. I hate tracking it. And the great thing with wounds is what I can do is just I have my own poker chips behind the table. I have white chips for my bennies as a GM. I have red chips for wounds and blue chips for shaken. So I can, where I keep the initiative cards, stack wounds and shaken tokens as combat goes on. And I don't have to scratch off how many hit points they've taken. And it's just so fast. But it doesn't mean combat's less meaningful. I mean, the player still has to exceed the bad guy's toughness when they're causing damage. The toughness score they have to exceed when they roll. Damage can explode. I was chatting in my Discord server with Judge Mark Plord, my Glowburn co-host on the currently paused Glowburn podcast. And Mark had mentioned exploding dice being, one of the best things about Savage Worlds, at least one of the things that he mentioned. And I link it into other subsystems of Savage Worlds. But exploding damage for sure could definitely swing a game, especially exploding wounds. We had an incident, 2 weeks ago where it was just back and forth, massive explosions, where the dice pools were just maxing out. Well, there's no max. You can just keep blowing up. Like 30 plus damage, characters going down, incapacitated, bad guys incapacitated. It went really, really fast, and it felt epic, and it felt flavorful, and it hit that, fast, furious, fun tagline that Savage Worlds goes by. So wound mechanics, I think that they are fantastic, and I wish I could use a similar system in other games. All right. This one is a little more obscure. This is setting rules. I love the specific setting rules that come with each Savage Worlds setting. When Judge Evie and I went and did our kind of Return to Savage Worlds show, we touched on how many settings there are for Savage Worlds. Not just for all of Savage Worlds, including previous editions of the game, and all the editions are pretty cross compatible. And I'm using the last edition of Savage Worlds East Texas University for my Savage Worlds Adventure Edition system campaign I'm running right now. The stuff, as long as you are, most of the recent stuff for Savage Worlds, from Explorers Edition to Suede, isn't that far off. But every setting in Savage Worlds are all unique. They're all cool. They've all got little quirks to them. And one of the quirks a lot of them have are called setting rules. And what a setting rule is, it's just some mechanics that sets that game aside, but they're modular. Now, there are some setting rules that exist in the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition core book. Now, I have my other Suede book pack, so here's my black leather Suede book here. But there are setting rules in here that when you're going to run your own Savage Worlds campaign, you can decide which of these you want to have at the table. So do you want to have a really heroic campaign? Well, you can just layer on the Savage Worlds setting rules of Dumb Luck, which allows players to Benny out of a critical failure. Usually they can't spend a Benny when they crit fail, when they roll double ones, one on the action die, one on the trait die, and one on the wild die. They can't Benny. They have to take that critical failure. But Dumb Luck allows them to spend it. The other one that'd be a great one for a heroic campaign would be Fast Healing, which means that the characters are healing at an unnatural rate. Their wounds are going away after a day or so. It's not taking 5 days per wound to go away without healing. But let's say that you want to have a gritty campaign. You want to run a campaign set in ancient Rome. Maybe it's Weird Wars Rome. You want it tougher. You can do gritty damage as a campaign roll, which means that every time a character takes or a bad guy takes a wound, you have to roll on an injury table to see what is wounded. And then there's another gritty way. You can go with dynamic backlash, which means a crit fail and a casting roll for a spellcaster means that they're going to get fatigue and they have to roll on a special chart for more terrible things that can happen. So what's neat is that with the modularity, you can mix and match these. You could take your Deadlands campaign, and if you wanted to run something that felt a lot more like trying to think of a less gritty Western here. Maybe something along the lines of like the Three Amigos, maybe, or if you wanted to run something that was, I was going to say Magnificent Seven, but most of them die in that. Spoilers. You could use Dumb Luck and Fast Healing in there, or you could take a campaign that's very bright and shiny, like East Texas University, and throw in gritty damage if you're just a jerk and you want to have college kids killed off in the game. The other part about being cool, it's modular, is that every setting usually has setting rules that come with it. And if you have multiple settings, you might look through them and say, I want to borrow that setting rule somewhere else. For instance, Last Parsec has a setting rule called Resolve, which is when someone gets a commendation, they get bonuses they can add connections, they can get extra... essentially, it's like an extra pool above Bennies where they can add connections in game to to NPCs. They can get extra Bennies. They could draw additional adventure cards if you're using the adventure card system, which is totally different. They can redraw action cards, but they have to spend their resolve. Now, resolve usually comes from doing something great in a mission. However, maybe you want to say resolve has to do with your score, your grade in East Texas University, which also has its own setting rules. Like it has an academics rule where after every advance, you're going to have to, before you get an advance, you're going to have to take an exam. And I don't know, why would you need to worry about exams in another campaign? Well, you could bring exams over and you could throw in Deadlands. And you could have, maybe your characters are all college students at like Princeton University who have traveled, or University of Pennsylvania, let's go with a Philly school. They have traveled west and they still have to, by telegram, take their tests, and they can't advance that academics rules. We want to have a weird and wonky, like, college student in the West game. And by the way, there are setting rules in Deadlands, including one for stampedes. There's a stampede setting rule. I didn't even realize this until I was trying to prepare setting rules for this game, or for this show. So it's how stampedes occur, and you could use that in another game. You could use that maybe in, I don't know, what's another game that have stampedes in it? I have Wise Guys over there. There's a stampede of angry mafiosos coming out of like the bada bing, and that's what you're dealing with. So anyway, I love setting rules. I think that it helps you. Oh, Andy's got one. Fievel Goes West. That's what we should run next. Fievel Goes West in Deadlands. That would, just little mice doing their thing. All right, I've said 4 so far. I have one last one. My last favorite thing about Savage Worlds, and the thing I think it does best, and maybe I'll get some hate for this one. Character progression. Savage Worlds has the best character progression mechanics in about any game that I've played. And I have played, and I say this from a point of I have played more campaigns to completion in other systems than Savage Worlds. The furthest I've gotten in Savage Worlds has been high end of veteran rank. There's 5 ranks in Savage Worlds. There's novice, seasoned, veteran, heroic, and legendary. I've gotten almost to heroic with one campaign previously, which is a steampunk game that took place in London, in the London area around the 1890s. It was a mashup of Rippers, the Rippers setting, and Space 1889, and a little bit of Deadlands, and some Doctor Who stuff that I had tossed in there just for good measure. But upon read through further, and as I play in the campaign I'm running right now, I feel that Savage Worlds just does a better job allowing a campaign to last longer before it starts, the mechanics start to break down. And we all know that most games have some kind of breakdown in their structure. I remember in D&D 3rd edition, around level 10 to 12, the characters started. I remember we had in our Eberron campaign for 3rd edition D&D, we had a shifter ranger that needed an Excel spreadsheet to figure out what his multi-attacks were when he was shifting. Oh, and to make things worse, he had a level of barbarian, obviously, so he raged occasionally. I mean, I friggin' hated 3rd edition. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to drink a cup of coffee, too. Sorry, the middle finger was not for 3rd edition, but it kind of was. D&D 4th edition, I played 30 levels of that. That broke down around level 5, right? Or 15 or 20. Kind of broke down a lot, actually. In Dungeon Crawl Classics, I think around level 5 or 6, there's 10 levels for DCC. It starts to break down a little bit. It gets a little messier. And in Cypher System, I believe playing above tier 4, there's 6 tiers in Cypher, you become a superhero. I remember my tier 5 character as a player in The Strange was a freaking god. And it was just, I mean, it wasn't in a world with gods in it. So you just felt really, really powerful. Savage Worlds advancement is, I'm not going to call it linear, but I want to call it a gentle curve. So I'm trying to find a way to describe this. I'm not going to describe it the way I was going to describe it, because I just feel like I just don't feel like it's appropriate. I wasn't going to describe it as something bad, but like I was just going to draw a shape, and then we're not going to do that. Let's just say it's a gentle curve. It slowly heads upward, Shannon, you shut up. The way you do it, it's very gentle. That's not true. We're 12 sessions in. I mean, how far do you want to get in character level? You want this campaign to end in 20 sessions? That would suck, man. So in Savage Worlds, when you advance, which is going to be the GM, this used to be every 5 XP the players received. Now you set up for how many sessions. Every so many sessions, your characters advance. When they advance, they can take another edge. They can improve their traits and skills. They can take new powers if they have an arcane background, or add power points. There's so many edges. There's so many ways to customize your character. I could go on about just character customization being one of the best things, but I really do love class-based systems too, for their own reasons. I don't want to say that character creation is the best thing in Savage Worlds. It's different. I really like it, and it lets characters be whatever the players want them to be. But most of these are just more of what a PC starts with, so that power creep doesn't show as early in the game. And while the players could min-max certain things, like a fleet-footed, acrobatic character that dual wields rapiers, is going to be very hard to hit. But if you double down on all those things, you're not going to be good at anything else. Just say if you're in Deadlands and your character is totally based on only dealing with the devil as a huckster, and that's what you're focused on. I mean, you might not be I know a lot of characters in my Deadlands campaign. I think that none of the players are looking at grit and how to find ways to make themselves get less scared. So, I mean, that's going to, if anything's going to catch up to my Deadlands campaign, it's going to be the fact that the players just don't know how scared their characters can get. And I think in the last session, when they were fighting a bone horror, they're going to start realizing that some of those fear charts really, really hurt. Oh wow, Shannon, that was you. You're the one that's just maxing out your dealing with the devil. But I don't think it's linear advancement, but I think that you don't start to see a point where the characters become a little bit tough to handle until probably you get above veteran rank into the heroic rank and legendary rank, and that's fine because at some point the character should break down. The campaign should break down a little bit mechanically, and things should get complicated. There should be player characters should have menu options at a certain level, and that's just. I think that it just doesn't do it so quickly that the GM can't control it. And see, Andy says it's going great. See, so look at that. Or do you mean what he has is going great with his powers? So Mordain and Trogdor here, if you're in Twitch, are two of my players, and Mordain here is playing a huckster who really likes to deal with the devil for getting access to powers that he doesn't have access to typically, which could come at a potential loss, and then Andy is playing a territorial ranger who, you know, I was kind of hoping I'd kill off last game and hoping he'd get harrowed. Like, I hate to say I want to see him get killed, but he's right now the only character without an arcane background right now, and I was kind of hoping his character would croak and we have a reason to like have him come back from the undeath, but not yet. I still haven't killed him yet. Anyway, all right, so you have it, everybody. That's it. That's my personal take on the 5 things Savage Worlds does best. And I have to say, if there's no time like now to get into Savage Worlds. You've got the Adventure Edition is by far the tightest, cleanest version of this game that's out there. I mean, the mechanics are just, they're stout, and they're fantastic to deal with. They don't they are easy to understand. Only get a couple beefs. Like my players are complaining this week, and I kind of get it. I kind of wish now, thinking what they're saying, that the healing skill and the healing power named something different. I didn't care until we have a player character who has both, and then it gets confusing. But other than a couple of minor gripes, the system is fantastic. And if you don't want to go around messing with books from prior editions, there are several Savage Worlds Adventure Edition settings that are in print right now from the Deadlands Weird West, which really is the granddaddy of all the Savage Worlds games. Savage Worlds Lost Colony, or Deadlands Lost Colony, which is Deadlands in space, to Holler is coming out. It's a new post-apocalyptic Appalachian game, although when reading it, it's not like grim post-apocalypse. It's more like the mountains are being poisoned by like the corporations. So it's pretty cool system. That's on their crowdfunding page, the Game Changers on Pinnacle. So you can kind of jump into that and get the PDFs for that, and the books will be out soon enough. But it's a great time to get into Savage Worlds. And if you want to find out more about it, go check out Pinnacle stuff at peginc.com. I will post it in the notes. So anyway, Kickstarter shoutouts this week. Same as last week, Dust Bunnies, Life Under the Couch, Savage Worlds for Kids. My friend Carl Kiesler is involved. It's like $500 away from funding. So I do not see this as a game that I would run frequently, maybe more than a handful of times, because my kids are older. I don't think it's really in their I mean, Cooper wants to play Lost Colony. I mean, he wants Deadlands. However, there was a time for my kids where this would have been like the perfect game. And we've played streamlined versions of Savage Worlds before to get them to the table. And I wish this game was there when that happened. So I'm a Kickstarter backer because I believe in it. And, if you follow me on Kickstarter, you'll see, yes, I am a backer. I'm not just saying crap to get money funneled over my friend Carl. Look, Carl's awesome. That whole crew is awesome. So please help them get over the mark. And I'll put that in the notes as well. Road crew shoutouts. Gen Con's coming up this week. That'll be cool. I'll be there. And Judge Eva will be there. I'll be having a good time. I hope a lot of you are there as well. And you can find us at Living for Crits on Instagram and at I Live for Crits on Twitter again because, we're just going to do it. So that's it. Be safe, be healthy, be kind. And I think for my outro ASMR, I'm just going to say, Father Padre, Daddy Daddy. And good night, everybody.